What's going on, everybody? Happy Halloween. The 2025 Halloween season is coming to a close today, but it's been fun covering a bunch of horror films here on the channel over the course of the month. And you guys know that the main series that I wanted to wrap up this season was the Halloween franchise. I've covered every single film in this franchise now, all of the timelines, the remakes. This was the last one today that I needed to cover, so finally, after many years of slowly covering the Michael Myers Halloween franchise, let's bring it to a close with the film that many call amongst the worst in the franchise, and this film is called Halloween Resurrection. Let's take a trip back to 2002 for a film directed by Rick Rosenthal and starring people like Jamie Lee Curtis, Brad Loree, Busta Rhymes, Thomas Ian Nicholas, Katee Sackhoff, and more. And before we get into this, I do want to make it clear, even though this film did come out over 20 years ago at this point, I will be talking about it fairly openly with some spoilers, so that is your spoiler warning. But again, this film's been out for quite some time, so I'm assuming if you clicked on this review, you've probably seen the film, but also if you don't care about spoilers, you're probably okay here. This isn't the kind of movie where I think it's really going to ruin your experience. If anything, I think the spoilers may make you want to go check it out to go have a good laugh. This film is the fourth and final film in the timeline of films that only acknowledges Halloween, the original film from 1978, the sequel Halloween 2, which is also directed by Rick Rosenthal, who directed this film, and Halloween H2O 20 years later, which was the last film I covered here. H2O erased everything that came after Halloween 2 and was kind of the first reboot of the franchise. And so here we are with the fourth film in that timeline, and this would be the end of the franchise for about 5 or 6 years before Rob Zombie's remakes would start coming out, which then he would go on to make 2 of those films, and then the franchise would sit silent until the late 2010s when we got the new set of movies that would once again retcon the franchise and reboot things. It's a messy franchise. I've talked about it in pretty much most of the videos for this franchise at this point, so I won't sit here and regurgitate all that once again. But as usual, let's get into what this film is all about, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the film. Following the bloody events of Halloween H2O, Halloween Resurrection opens with Laurie Strode locked away in a mental institution, haunted by guilt after killing the wrong man. When Michael Myers inevitably returns to finish what he started, Laurie's fate sets the tone for a new chapter, unfortunately, and the film then shifts gears to focus on a group of college students who agree to spend the night inside the Myers house as a part of a live-streamed internet reality show called Dangertainment. But once the cameras start rolling, Michael Myers comes home, and this broadcast turns into a night of real-life horror. And if you've seen this film before, you know that it opens with probably one of the most frustrating and most annoying and just flat out stupid openings that this franchise has ever had. To quickly talk about the end of the last film, H2O, it was, in a lot of ways, a perfect ending to the franchise. You bring Laurie Strode back, the film itself is pretty solid, still holds up to this day, I would say, and it ends with a showdown between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers where she ends up decapitating him. It's a pretty solid ending, but this film, Resurrection, isn't about the traditional slasher thing of bringing back a killer by resurrecting him in some sort of ridiculous fashion, but instead we get a retconned opening, which I guess was the plan all along to continue on the franchise, but for the viewers definitely feels like a cheap retcon where they essentially make it so that the Michael Myers that we thought was killed at the end of the last film actually was not Michael Myers, and instead Michael Myers right before that had crushed the throat of an individual so they could not speak, and he put the mask on them, and so Laurie thinks she's killing Michael Myers, but it turns out in fact it is not Michael Myers. So she's in a sanitarium of some sort. She is hiding away, waiting for Michael Myers to return. He returns at the beginning of this movie. There's a little bit of a showdown between the two of them. She ends up capturing him, hanging him upside down via a trap, but to make sure that she does not kill the wrong person again, she decides to try to take the mask off, which leads to him grabbing her. They almost fall off a ledge together, and then he stabs Laurie Strode in the back. She kisses her brothers on the lips, but with the mask on, and then says, "See you in hell," and he drops her to her demise. That is how this movie opens up, completely undoing the end of the last film and killing off the main star of this franchise outside of Michael Myers. Immediately, a horrible start. And then the movie completely becomes a different film. It really never needed that opening, to be honest. I think the film would have been better off just saying, hey, Laurie Strode got away and Michael Myers came back and he's dealing with a new set of kids this time. But instead, the film decides to overcomplicate it and, try to tie it into the last film, retcon the events of that finale that was so solid, and then focus on another group of characters that have nothing to do with Laurie Strode for the rest of the film. Again, this would end up bringing an end to the Halloween franchise as we knew it for the time before they would get remade by Rob Zombie. So yeah, this film definitely had some irreparable damage on the franchise for that period of time. And it's just crazy to me watching this film that they even went through with it. How they watched this film after even some of the stinkers in the franchise before and thought that this was in any way, shape, or form a way to continue it on. It's honestly insane. So then we get introduced to this group of college characters, most notably the character of Sarah, played by Bianca Kajlich. You also have Katee Sackhoff in here as the character of Jen. And yeah, I love seeing Katee Sackhoff in anything. It's great to see her so young here. Nowadays, for me, she is just Bo-Katan from Star Wars. We'll always love her in that role. From the animated stuff to the live action stuff, Katee Sackhoff has become a very big part of my life as a fan of Star Wars over the course of years. And I just think of her like that all the time. But it's nice to see her in some of these roles that were, in her earlier days of acting. And so here she is playing a very eccentric friend who's excited to tell her friend Sarah, hey, we got the chance to go be a part of this Dangertainment thing where they're going to go stay at Michael Myers' house and you're going to stay overnight and they're going to live stream it. There is a quirky kind of quaint element to the time of this. This is long before live streaming was really a popularized thing. It was the earlier days of webcam. So there is kind of this silliness to it that I do think is pretty fun to watch in that sense. I think it's a fun idea and I think they were kind of ahead of the curve on that. But unfortunately, the execution is not great. And this whole live stream reality show is run by two producers for this show, most notably Busta Rhymes' character. You also have Tyra Banks in here, and this whole thing is called Dangertainment. And so there is some fun as they're kind of setting this all up. You have all the different characters that are the typical archetypes for characters in a slasher film. You have the douchebag, you have the cocky characters, you have characters in the mix who are more fearful, you have the characters who are more adventurous, you have the characters who are there to be, the sexy characters or do the sexy time stuff, I should say. And so the film definitely, checks off all those boxes, on top of also having some just flat out ridiculous moments of dialogue that just make you feel like this movie is very late 90s, early 2000s. And so, yeah, just immediately the tone of the film feels so different from the rest of the films in the franchise and just feels goofy in all the wrong ways. It's not a film that I can say is necessarily gripping, but its ridiculousness almost keeps you engaged to see where it's going to go. In terms of the kills throughout the course of the film, a lot of them are pretty standard fare. We've seen a lot of these kills before. Traditional stabbings from Michael Myers, moments where he's crushing somebody's head, or when he pins them up against a wall, or in the case of this film, up against a door or a gate. We've seen those kind of kills done by him so many times before, so I don't necessarily think that Halloween Resurrection does much to really elevate it when it comes down to kills or gore. I would say the coolest kill in the film, or one that I think is the most notable one, mainly for a specific reason, is the first kill once they're at the Myers house, which is of one of the producers that's there, where he actually takes the camera that this guy was setting up and uses like the pointy edge of it and pulls out like the tripod and stabs the guy in the neck. What's really interesting about that is that I just recently, for the very first time, watched the film Peeping Tom in part of a collaboration with a series I do over on the Latino Slant YouTube channel, where we do a group of us called the Los Cinematicos. And so we all chose different films pre-70s to watch and cover, and Peeping Tom was part of that list. So I actually just recently watched that film for the very first time for that live stream. And in that movie, the guy who kills people in the film kills them in that manner. He films them, he pulls out the tripod leg, there is a sharp edge, and he stabs them as he's filming them. So I thought that was a cool callback to Peeping Tom, that even though I've seen this Halloween film, I never recognized that connection to Peeping Tom because I'd never seen it before. So I think that's definitely like the standout kill for me. But yeah, outside of that, once things start to get going and Michael Myers is, killing people off, there's fun to be had, but the movie is ridiculous in every way, shape, or form. The dialogue is bad. The performances are a mixed bag. I think there's some people who find a nice groove of understanding what kind of movie they're in, but you can definitely tell the direction of the film just felt messy. At times it feels like it wants to be creepy and eerie, and at times it feels like it wants to be a little bit more hokey and silly. And I do think that sometimes that balance clashes a little bit and it leaves things to be desired for sure. Because as a Halloween film, it doesn't do much to really, build upon the mythos and the creep factor of Michael Myers. But as a cheesy slasher, it definitely understands where it sits within that realm. But it does feel like it sometimes is trying to have its cake and eat it too. So yeah, that's an interesting element. Throughout the course of the film, though, these characters that are there start to uncover that the things that are happening in the house or the things they're finding in the house may have actually been set up by Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks in the film. But of course, as they're starting to feel like things are fake, that's when Michael Myers shows up and actually showcases that there is a real horror to what's going on. And so, again, there is fun to be had, but it's pretty ridiculous. Now, one element of this film, though, when it comes down to fun to be had, again, with ridiculous, is a scene specifically that most people remember from this film with Busta Rhymes later on in the film, where he goes toe to toe with Michael Myers and we see his enthusiasm for the karate genre.
So you want to be on Dangertainment? Let's see what you got.
I think it goes without saying that scene is just hilarious. It's hilarious, and it's part of the legacy of this franchise in a kind of a nostalgic and silly way at this point. But I know when it came out at the time, this film was just panned for just being so stupid. But because we've had so many films in this franchise at this point, and so much time has passed that we have a little bit more nostalgia for the cheese of the 90s and the 2000s, the passage of time allows this scene and this film to kind of have a little bit more of a quirkiness to it and less so of a just flat out badness to it. Though this scene is in a lot of ways incredibly cringy, but it does lead to a scene where you think Busta Rhymes is dead and he actually comes back to deliver a pretty sweet line.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
And now with all that said, one thing I haven't even mentioned in this review so far is like the most pointless element to this film that really goes nowhere. And that is the inclusion of a character known as Miles, who goes by the name of Deckard, who's played by Ryan Merriman. Now at the beginning of the film, we learn that he's got this internet relationship with Sarah, the main character. And so they communicate that way. He knows she's going on this show. He goes to a Halloween party. He ends up going to like wherever the computer room or the office space is in this Halloween party's house, and ends up watching the live stream. And so over the course of the film, he's texting her on his old school phone and messaging her, I think probably through email, really, to be honest, and letting her know what's happening on the other cameras to try to save her life. And so there is this kind of like, he's her hero on the outside. He has a thing for her, but she doesn't really know what his real name is or what he looks like. She calls him Deckard. And at the very end of the film, when she's the only surviving person alongside Busta Rhymes, you think that Deckard was probably going to show up. There would be some connection there, but there isn't. It's the most pointless portion of the film for him to just be this fanboy of hers who's just kind of watching things from the outside, and then the film never really takes it anywhere else other than that. It is an entirely cringy element to this film, and just all in all, I think encompasses the struggles with this film. Ultimately, Halloween Resurrection is a film that doesn't know what it's trying to be. While there are some solid kills and some fun to be had with some of the silly antics, and I can appreciate the fact that it was maybe ahead of its time with webcams and live streams being a very new concept at the time, I do think it's a film that ultimately betrays what the previous film did immediately with the first scene. It betrays the character of Laurie Strode and then introduces us to a slew of characters that you'll never care about. It does nothing to expand upon the mythos and the creep factor of Michael Myers. It does nothing to make the film gripping and glue you to what's going on. It just feels like a very run-of-the-mill cheesy slasher that was made for the sake of having a popular IP come back once again, and I'm not surprised that this film was what kind of ended things for the franchise for the time being, until Rob Zombie, like I've already mentioned a couple of times, came to the franchise with a remake of the original film with a much darker approach. That film is divisive, and I have reviewed that here on the film alongside his second film and every other Michael Myers related film here on the channel. So if you guys are interested, I will leave a playlist down below in the description box for you guys to check that out. But that's going to be my quick thoughts on Halloween Resurrection, revisiting it in 2025. It's a film that does not hold up. It's not great. It's poorly written. It's poorly acted, but there is a silly ridiculousness to it that I can't lie is kind of nostalgic for me at this point and a little bit fun to watch. So it wasn't a terrible time to watch during Halloween, but by no means is this a film that I think really adds to the legacy of Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise. So that's going to be my thoughts on Halloween Resurrection. Leave some thoughts down below. How do you guys feel about this film? Where does this rank for you in the longevity of the franchise? Looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. And again, happy Halloween. I hope you guys enjoyed the 2025 spooky season. And I look forward to covering tons of other movies and all kinds of stuff moving forward as we get out of the Halloween season and start to cover maybe some more Christmas themed stuff or holiday stuff in general. So a big thanks to you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.